Even if Malik Willis is only as good as, say, Brett Hundley, this Green Bay Packers team is better positioned to win without the quarterback than it ever was with Aaron Rodgers.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you'll find Locked On Packers, the number one Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. In 2013 and 2017, when Aaron Rodgers went down, the Packers had no real path to winning except to play some really bad teams like the Bears and the historically bad Browns. That was a different group. 2013, 2017, those were good teams when Aaron Rodgers was on them. They had talent, but it was a system built on the quarterback. And when the quarterback wasn't in it and not incredible, it would crumble. And that wasn't necessarily a reflection of the disparate pieces, but rather the structure itself. It was built to be that way. This team has a quarterback that is very good. Maybe not Aaron Rodgers level, but is very good. It is not a team that is built to require him to be very good. Now, it won in the second half of last year on the shoulders of Jordan Love. There's no question about it. But it's not a coincidence that as the team took off, it was the pieces playing significantly better in addition to Jordan Love. And that, oh wow, all of a sudden Jordan Love looks much better when receivers are actually running routes when and where they're supposed to. And oh my gosh, they have a competent running game all of a sudden. Amazing that the quarterback would look better in those moments. Even with Jordan Love not playing his best last Friday, the Packers were second in week 1 in rushing EPA. Josh Jacobs averaged 8 yards a carry in the second half of that game after he got used to what was going on. The Packers changed their cleats. A lot of them by the second half. The footing was an abomination. We know that. Jaden Reed hits a 33-yarder on a designed touch. They are better equipped because the offense takes the burden off of the quarterback to do absolutely everything. The fact that Aaron Rodgers could do it is incredible, but what we saw on Monday in San Francisco is just another piece of evidence that those systems, when they're built, even with good pieces around them, there's a good offensive line in New York, a really good running back, a really good receiver, and some nice pieces around him. But if the quarterback isn't incredible, it doesn't work with Aaron Rodgers. And this is not a drag at Aaron Rodgers. This is not about that, because of course you build the plane out of Aaron Rodgers when you have Aaron Rodgers. Of course you would. Everyone would do that. It's not a coincidence that when Rodgers gave himself over most to Matt LaFleur was 2020, and the offense was historically good. This team can run the ball in different and interesting ways. They can run it with power and they can run it with finesse. They have a slew of weapons that they can get involved in incredible and diverse ways. They can win with scheme. They can win with individual ability. That end around from Jaden Reed that he scored on, that could have been a 3-yard play. He should have been tackled 2 or 3 different times. That is just Jaden Reed being outstanding. Josh Jacobs on the 34-yard run, he makes a man miss in the hole and then is off to the races. He had to do that. Now they opened up a little bit of a crease for him, but then he has to make a guy miss, and he does it. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs. Dontavian Wicks is not going to play as bad in week 2 as he did in week 1. You want to run routes on bad grass. If you're a route god the way Dontavian Wicks is, it's really hard to do. He's going to have a better chance to route up these Colts corners. And you might be asking, what Colts corners? On an actual playable NFL surface. Now, of course, it's going to rain. No, I don't know what the forecast is even, but that would make me feel silly, certainly. And then it's the structure of the offense. What Matt LaFleur gives them is an offense where you're taking things off of the quarterback's plate rather than doling it on. It's not quite Thanksgiving, where you got this loaded plate, but there's enough food to eat on. And Malik Willis is going to have to make throws for the Packers to have a functioning NFL offense, but they're going to give him those boot action throws. They're going to give him run pass options, vertical RPOs, where you're just reading one conflict defender. Or maybe it's a zone read where you're reading that conflict defender on the line of scrimmage. There are ways to make this simple for your quarterback. And I kept waiting in 2017 for Mike McCarthy to lean into the mobility of Brett Hundley. I kept waiting. And they never really did it. And they kept saying, oh, we're running these RPOs, but they weren't. They weren't. Because they were giving it like 90% of the time. I mean, I'd have to go back and watch to see if every read was good. Part of the problem is you have a quarterback that you don't know if their reads were trustworthy either. So this offense is better set up with the playmakers, with the structure, with an improved run game. That was a huge focus in training camp to make this run game better. That they are set up to attack defenses better now than they ever were with Aaron Rodgers because the quarterback is not the offense. It's also the case that Gus Bradley is going to make this a little bit easier because they do one thing mostly. That's play cover 3. They were the only team in the league in week 1 that did not play a snap, not a snap of man coverage. The only team in the league. And the only team that played more of one single coverage in week 1 was the Panthers. They played 60% of their snaps in cover 3. They got beat by approximately 150 points by the New Orleans Saints. Gus Bradley is just going to do what Gus Bradley does, and that is play single high safety and zone coverage. They'll mix in some cover 2. They'll spin safeties down. They'll play a little bit of quarters. They'll do some other things, but they are a zone team and almost exclusively cover 3. So if you know you're going to get cover 3 mostly, then you've got all these cover 3 beaters. The Shanahan tree offense was designed to beat cover 3. So this is Matt LaFleur's opportunity to prove me right, basically, that this is the best infrastructure, the best chance that the Packers have had in 15 plus years to win without the quarterback. And that's a credit to Brian Gutekunst. It's a credit to Matt LaFleur. Now they still have to go out and do it. All right, Lily Zhao on the show today. She's coming up in just a second here on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. You're going to want the Sunday Ticket. The quad box. The quad box got me through. You put the red zone on one channel, you put a couple 2-3 games around it, especially on the early slate. That's the best way to do it. With a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. So go to FanDuel, check out the Packers odds this week, 3.5-point home dogs to the 0-1 Indianapolis Colts. I don't know about that one. Just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. The new Locked On NFL is here. Locked On NFL is now 2 shows every day. First, the madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso. Then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL insight. Add in the Locked On local experts and get unprecedented NFL insight. Hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. Make the madman Tyler Rowland and the barber Tony Wiggins your second listen at the Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. Joining me now, our first time to talk about football that we've seen the Packers play in the 2024 NFL season. Maybe wish the outcome had been a little bit better and that the news out of it had been a little bit better, but we'll make do. Lily Zhao from Fox 6 in Milwaukee. Zhao, how you doing?
Peter, it's been kind of a whirlwind now that we're back in like the football mode of things, just with our scheduling, what's going on this week, but I'm loving it. Like you said, it was not the ideal week 1, but we'll get into that. But I'm doing well so far. How you doing?
I'm good. Matt LaFleur talked about the Jordan Love injury as kind of good news, right? Like it's not the best news. The best news is actually he's fine. We knew that was going to be pretty unlikely coming out of that game. And I guess we'll start there and kind of work our way back to the Eagles because I do want to touch on some of that stuff. But when that play happened at the end and he goes down in obvious pain without having to do any sort of like doctoring or like even you didn't even stay at a Holiday Inn that night. But what was your reaction when you saw that?
I think initially when I saw him down in pain, this is before we got into any replays, we didn't know what was going on. I'm thinking, oh no, because I'll just put it this way. I'm like the worst case scenario kind of person. So I'm like, oh no, like he's out for the year.
Yeah.
The season's a wash. But I think after watching that, it's an MCL sprain, MCL injury is probably the best case scenario for how we saw that knee pop when he went down. And it just is so unfortunate that it was the second to last play of the game. And that's what happens. But I think everyone was holding their collective breaths, kind of wondering what's the season going to look like now, right? Because we've seen this with Rodgers in the past where that collarbone, when he broke it, just the unraveling of the season and kind of what's next, right? And so fortunately for this season, the what's next is Jordan Love will be on the field hopefully soon. And I think the good news was Matt LaFleur said no IR stint. So that was also very encouraging news. But I think at first I was like, oh no. But now we're like, okay, we know what's going on. We'll just have to get him back whenever he does come back. But like you mentioned, there was a glimpse of hope when Matt LaFleur said, if Jordan doesn't get cleared. I don't think he's going to get cleared this week, unfortunately.
How much of that is gamesmanship, do you think, with Matt LaFleur?
I think so. I think they know, obviously, he's not going to be playing in week 2. I mean, he talked about, we're not going to leverage the future for the short term. So you're not going to just trot Jordan out there and the way his knee pop, be like, yeah, he'll be fine. So I think that probably was a little bit of a, still have to give the Colts a little bit of a, maybe we'll see Jordan Love, but probably not kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, look, the Colts, I think it more becomes a question, Titans, Vikings. I think Vikings is, for me, that is, as soon as it happened and as soon as I started to hear from people, that the thought is that it's an MCL. I started circling the Vikings because I'm just like, that's the game. If you can split these next two, and I don't, there's a non-zero chance they can win both of them. I think, like the Titans did not exactly cover themselves in glory in week 1 against the Chicago Bears, losing a game where Caleb Williams can't even get to 100 yards passing. I'm optimistic about what this can look like. As we were going through the machinations of, okay, 4 to 6 weeks. If it's 6 weeks, like, was there ever a period where you were like, a veteran makes sense if, like, what were your parameters there? Because I had mine.
Yeah, I would say if it was like a 6 to 8 week range and they put Jordan on IR, I was thinking that's probably where you want to bring somebody in. But I think obviously in the short term, when he's coming back, it probably made sense to, hey, Malik's been here for a couple of weeks, but he's been here. We still have Sean as a backup quarterback, so there's no need to. And I think, Matt LaFleur kind of debunked it as we weren't interested in talking to anybody else. We weren't going to bring anybody else in because I think they know that Jordan's going to be coming back sooner rather than later. But I think if there was that IR stint, 6-week, 8-week range, that might have made sense to bring in a veteran quarterback. What about you?
Well, I felt like anything more than 4 games to me was enough, because you can't let the season get away from you now. And so now that it looks like, 3 to 4 games is probably the high end of where it is, that I think they made the right decision. And of course, they made the decision with information we didn't have, right? When we're speculating, we don't know. We don't have the medical information that they do. So we know Jordan Love is going to make every effort to get back. And we know he can play from the pocket. That's the thing is, and I don't want to compare everything Jordan Love to Aaron Rodgers, but you watch Aaron Rodgers on Monday night and he couldn't move. I mean, it was obvious he could not move and he had to play from the pocket, and, he can do that. And so can Jordan Love. Jordan Love does not rely on his legs the same way some other quarterbacks do. And so maybe that, maybe you think about Aaron Rodgers 2013, Aaron Rodgers 2017, when he could come back, or even a few years ago where he's dealing with lower body injuries and he's just like, okay, I'm just playing from the pocket. You remember, I think was 2014 your first year on the beat?
2015, I think. So
okay. At the end of the 2014 season, he's playing on a calf injury where they run everything out of the pistol. And he's just like, okay, I'm barely taking a drop. It's sort of like hop, throw, because he can't really do the normal things. I think Jordan Love can probably do that. But it is interesting, Lily. I don't know if you noticed, in the middle of the game, Jordan Love seemed to be doing a lot of off platform, a lot of off his back foot. And we haven't gotten any information at this point. And maybe when we get to talk to Jordan, we'll get some clarity on this. He seemed hurt or dealing with something before he got hurt, to me. And they're showing him on the sidelines getting worked on. And so I wonder about that part of it too.
Yeah, I do too. And I'm wondering if it was that, where his leg kind of slipped early on, like that first quarter where we see him slide.
Yep, exactly.
I'm thinking maybe that's where something happened, because, he was getting calf treatments throughout the game. So I'm wondering if that's, what aggravated something. And then on top of that, he also hurt his MCL. But I think that's probably why, right? But fortunately, he's a quarterback that can throw off his back foot. I think if it was a different quarterback, this might have been a different scenario, different outcome in a game. But it just was unfortunate to see that happen, because I know that the sliding and the slipping wasn't ideal. I know they tried their best to get that field kind of up to par, and they were using all the right grass, et cetera, et cetera. But I think just that was such a bummer to see him slip so early in the game, and maybe that affected his footwork and his ability to throw.
Well, and maybe affected his confidence in the turf. And he feels like, hey, I can't really plant and drive because of, this turf issue. So we don't know. And maybe we'll get information on that. Malik Willis, I talked to Tyler Rowland, who covered Malik Willis in Tennessee. He's our Titans host on the Locked On Podcast Network. And he's very bullish on what Malik Willis can be in Green Bay. Did not think he was given the tools at all to succeed in Tennessee. A slew of different coordinators. The Packers seem to be impressed with how quickly he's gotten up to speed here. So how do you expect the offense to change with Malik Willis versus Jordan Love?
Obviously, we're not going to see the off-script stuff. I think, the offensive line, the running game, they're going to rely heavily on those guys to keep them clean and create some holes, because we know that Malik Willis certainly can run. That's kind of a big part of his game, right? He really ran well in the preseason. So I'm looking forward maybe some QB design runs. Yeah. Just if there's a hole and they need 5 yards, like Malik can get it with his legs, right? So I would say that, but everything else, just kind of keep it manageable. I mean, Matt LaFleur can do a good job of scheming guys open, giving him the easy throw, the easy check down, pass it off to Josh Jacobs, make things easy for him, but give him a challenge in terms of, hey, if you see an open lane and you can get that first down with your legs, go for it. So I don't think they're going to have to really change too much, but they have to realize that, he's also got a big arm too. So maybe there's a deep shot that they want to put in there, but kind of pare things down, make it manageable for him, and give him a winning chance. And I think that starts with the offensive line, because, if the Colts are coming after him and he's running for his life, sideline to sideline, that's not really sustainable to win. So give him a chance, make things easy, and see what damage he can do with his legs. And I want to see a deep shot, because that kid can throw. So we'll see what happens.
We're talking key players, and we're talking rookies next with Lily Zhao on Locked On Packers. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the price you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. And the new Locked On NFL is here. Locked On is now 2 shows every day. First, the madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso. Then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Make the madman Tyler Rowland and the barber Tony Wiggins your second listen at the Locked On NFL YouTube page or wherever you get podcasts. Oh yeah, the arm talent is not a question with Malik Willis. He can absolutely sling it. And I think they're going to just have to find some solutions early on. I was trying to go back just before, in fact, we jumped on here. I was trying to find, do you remember early last season, the Packers actually ran some option with Jordan Love and it looked terrible. And we were just like, okay, can we put this on night? Like, I mean, true option, like triple option. They can do that with Malik Willis and it's already in the playbook. I mean, that's the cool thing about it is this offense is so malleable to who is running it that they can get to these different kinds of things. So I'm excited to see what Matt LaFleur cooks up. Speaking of cooking up, the defense, we got some differences, but one thing you and I talked about, and I talked about it all last week, I'm going, Jeff Hafley has got to just test Jalen Hurts, got to big blitz Jalen Hurts. They did not big blitz him one time. And I could not believe that is what happened. What did you think of the way that the defense looked on Friday? Because I came away after rewatching it feeling better about it, but in real time, you're like, it's kind of rough.
I was going into it probably like a lot of other people. We're going to see they're going to knock Jalen Hurts on and, knock him to the ground. They're going to get after him. They're going to be really aggressive up front. Obviously, the takeaways were certainly there, so that was a check mark. But the run defense was not good. Granted, you're taking on Saquon Barkley, so he's just a talented tailback, so you have to give him his kudos. But in terms of this like attack first, aggressive defense, get after a quarterback, it really wasn't there. And credit the Eagles offensive line. I mean, Lane Johnson was stonewalling guys left and right. And I was expecting just more quarterback hits, more sacks. The Eagles O-line certainly held up, but I was expecting Hafley to let it rip, and they didn't really let it rip. And they certainly kept Jalen Hurts in front of them with his legs, and that was good, but he burned them with his arm. Again, he has talented playmakers around him, but I didn't really see that aggressive nature, especially with the pass rush, and that's what Matt LaFleur noted as well. I like the takeaways. I like the fact that they kept him contained, but the big plays they gave up, the run defense, they were kind of Swiss cheese. And that pass rush, I want to see that aggressiveness moving forward.
Yeah, and I would love to know, and we'll hear from Jeff Hafley this week, I'm sure, about how much of that was game plan, just keeping Jalen Hurts contained. That's probably going to be the game plan this week against Anthony Richardson, who is bigger, faster, and stronger than Jalen Hurts, which is crazy to say for a guy that, squats 1 million pounds for Jalen Hurts. So, yeah, I mean, I'm wondering if we might not see the real defense here until they face someone like Will Levis, Sam Darnold coming up weeks 3 and 4. Because I just don't know if that's the way you handle these quarterbacks. And in the footing conditions, I kind of just feel like we have to, other than structural things about like, okay, they played cover 3, cover 1, whatever. I kind of want to throw a lot of this out. Am I wrong for that? Do you think?
I don't think so. And you really have to adapt to the quarterbacks, right? You're not going to be able to blitz a guy like Anthony Richardson full force and expect him not to potentially scamper away from you versus a Sam Darnold. So maybe that's what they were doing. And like you mentioned, the turf was not 100% ideal. So maybe they couldn't really go full force because of that. But I don't think what we saw in week 1 is going to be an indication of, oh no, it's the same defense every year, a different coordinator. I think, they set a solid foundation for what they wanted to do. They game plan around a mobile quarterback. So we'll see if that game plan is the same this week. But I don't think this is what we're going to be seeing, a cookie cutter version of every single week. They're going to be adapting to their quarterbacks, like you said. So I expect something similar, I would say, against the Colts. But I think full album blitzes weeks 3 and 4 would really behoove them, especially for Will Levis.
Let's talk about the rookies. Javon Bullard stepped right in like he's an NFL player. And I think that's really encouraging for the Packers because they need him to do that. Jordan Morgan rotating with Sean Ryan. Adrian Cooper got on the field a little bit. I thought he was really impressive. Matt LaFleur was pretty declarative and said he's going to expect him to play more. Of those 3 guys, let's just say this week, because the Packers are going to need all 3 of them at some point this season. This week, of those 3, who do you think is most important?
That's a good question. I probably would say Javon Bullard. I feel like Jordan Morgan, the steps are there, but I feel like this defense, right? I mean, first of all, Anthony Richardson can sling it. We've seen it. Big arm, can run. So what does Javon do back there in the secondary to kind of swing the favor to the Packers and to their defense? So I think he came out, like you mentioned, just this kind of bulldog mentality, in week 1. And you saw him clock A.J. Brown. I mean, seriously, exerted himself. We saw that. And he's not afraid to go out there and hit somebody. So I think with how he plays and his aggressiveness back there and what he's able to do to kind of keep things in front of him, per se, will be important. Not to say that Edgerrin and Jordan won't be, but I would say what Javon does this week could be crucial.
I like that because the only reason the Colts were able to move the ball in week 1 is because they got 3 just like not real throws from Anthony Richardson. Unbelievable plays, 0 platform, throwing the ball 60 yards. I mean, you have to, your safeties have to be able to not give those kinds of plays up. And I honestly, I thought you would say one of the other 2 guys. Frankly, I thought Javon Bullard was the only answer you wouldn't give. But then as you're explaining, I'm like, I get it. I think she's right. Maybe she's right. I don't know. I'm really excited to see Adrian Cooper, I have to say. I think this is the week. If you go back and watch Coop against Alabama, and he's chasing around Jalen Milroe and the kind of athlete that he is, and Cooper makes him look slow, I think you have to have his speed on the field against someone like Anthony Richardson, just as a spy, something, so that you are not letting him beat you with his legs. And then when he does break the pocket, when he's looking to throw, if you can have someone bearing down on him, it makes it much harder to make those throws down the field. So I think they're all going to matter. I think they're all going to be important. And we'll see if we can talk about a win next week, Lily. I would love that. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good. Thanks, Peter.
All right. Thanks to Lily for joining the show. Awesome to talk with her. We got the crossover coming on Thursday. The boys from Locked On Colts join me to break down a week 2 where we don't really know what to expect from the Packers or really from the Colts, who played a tight one against the Texans, but down to down, play to play, were pretty vastly outplayed. So what do we make of that? I don't know. We'll see what the Colts guys say. That means we're back tomorrow. Okay, Twitter, Peter_Bukowski or Locked On Packers. You're also on Instagram, Locked On Packers, TikTok, Locked On Packers, YouTube, Locked On Packers. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you can on Locked On Packers so you can stay Locked On Packers.